Hi everyone. So for today we're going to be looking at how to answer some of these exponential word problems. So let's get started. So let's see, it says the radioactive substance cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years. The amount, A of t in grams, of a sample of cesium-137 remaining after t years is given by the following exponential function. So here we see what A of t is equal to. Okay. And it says find the initial amount in the sample and the amount remaining after 80 years. Round your answers to the nearest gram as necessary. Alright, so for the first thing is notice this equation is written in the form of y equals a times b to the x. Okay, so if you remember from the notes, a represents your initial value, so how much you start with, and your b is your growth factor or decay factor depending on the situation. So in this case, this is a decay type graph because we're looking at half-life, so that's your first indication. And the second thing is this 1/2 is your b value, and that is in between 0 and 1. So if you want the initial amount in the sample, and it follows from this, then we would say that the initial amount is 458. But let's say you don't remember that, and you're like, how do I find the initial amount? Well, initial amount is when time is 0. So if you really can't remember this right here, what I would do is I would plug 0 into my equation for t, and if you do that, notice this right here, anything to the 0 power, because 0 divided by 30 is 0, ends up equaling 1. So this is really saying 458 times 1, which is just 458. So 458, and what is this, in grams, is my initial amount. So that's how much I started with. But now the second part is saying find the amount remaining after 80 years. So in this equation, t represents your time. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to substitute 80 in for this t. So let's do that. So I have A of t, which is 80. So remember, this is just notation. Is 458 times 1/2. Now this is t over 30, so t is 80 over 30. And so remember, on this side you don't do anything with that. That's just notation. That's just saying the amount in 80 years. But on this side, we can plug into the calculator. And depending on the calculator that you have, make sure that this exponent here, it may need to be in parentheses, especially if the calculator has the arrow function there, so you may have to type in something like this. Okay, so be careful with that. But when you plug it in, I got approximately 72.1304. But if we look back at the directions, it says round your answers to the nearest gram. So if I'm rounding to the nearest gram, it is going to be 72 grams. So in 80 years, right, even though I started with 458 grams of this substance, I now only have 72.